False prophets are all over the place. But one thing that is not false is a prophecy that's in the Bible. It is the Word of God. The person of Jesus is spoken about in every book of the Bible. Even those in the Old Testament that were written hundreds and even thousands of years before Jesus ever appeared. Now, there are different kinds of prophecy. Some of them are kind of vague, if you want to use that term, or they're shadowed in symbolism, like when they talk about the tabernacle. The tabernacle is full of symbols about Jesus. It doesn't say anything specific, like in the book of Psalms 22, when David wrote, "They cast lots for my clothing." That's very specific. That is a quote that you can say, my goodness, there's no way he could have known that. Others are less specific. The reasons for prophecy are threefold. The first reason is that prophecy is done so that people can have hope for a future. The chosen people were struggled for many centuries under the rule of other authorities, and it was good for them to understand that something better was going to happen, that Jesus was going to come and free them from their captivity. They just didn't understand what captivity they were going to be freed from. Also, prophecy warns about impending doom if a people or an individual is doing something that they need to change. And the fulfillment of prophecy strengthens faith. It strengthens all our faith when it's fulfilled. In the earliest time in man's history, Jesus was on the scene, but people ignored him. In Genesis 1:26, God said, "Let us make man in our image." It doesn't say, let me make man in my image. It doesn't say, let us make man in our image. It says, let us make man. Yes, it doesn't say, let me make man in our image. So it indicated that there is at least a dual God, or the Trinity, which we believe in. Later on, when God created man, if you remember, there was a little bit of a problem. The man and the woman who were supposed to be seeking God and perhaps taking the fruit of life in the garden, instead disobeyed. And they ate the fruit of the knowledge of good and evil, even though there was all this other fruit that they could have had. And their lives and our lives changed forever in a big way. The repercussions of Adam's sin caused pain for women and childbirth, with the knowledge of good and evil, fear, guilt, shame, difficulty in agriculture, perspiration, and sudden death of a relationship followed, as well as eventual death of the body. One little detail we often overlook in all this drama was a promise that was made to the serpent. Everybody remember the serpent in the Garden of Eden. All the serpents, or at least this serpent at that time, had legs. And he was very smart, intelligent. But after that time, serpents became lowly creatures. And Satan was doomed. Those of us who recall that scripture, and I'll just read. Do we have Genesis 3:15 up here? There you go. This is God speaking. Let's all read it. "And I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your offspring and hers. He will crush your head, and you will strike his heel." A lot of people don't realize that the he that they're talking about here is Jesus. He will crush your head. And the Hebrews knew this passage ever since Moses. And they repeated it, they memorized it, and they knew that something was coming. Somebody was coming, and he was going to do serious damage to this symbol of evil, the snake. Does anybody remember the first scene of the movie, The Passion of the Christ? Anybody remember that? The first scene? Who saw the movie, The Passion of the Christ? Okay. Anybody remember what happened in the first scene?
Jesus stepped on the snake.
Yes. Yeah, and I think actually it started out with him in the Garden of Gethsemane, and he's praying, and he's perspiring blood, and he's in great distress and great agony. And suddenly, he calls on his Father, he prays, and something changes in his whole demeanor, and there's a peace over his face, and he gets up, and the next scene is right on that snake's head, and the snake just rolls over. Now, that was an excellent scene, and it was very symbolic of what was going to happen. It did not happen at that moment, except for the fact that Satan was trying to discourage Jesus. Jesus knew exactly what was going to happen as far as his agony, his crucifixion, which was going to happen in a few hours. He knew it was going to happen, and Satan kept badgering him, and of course, this was symbolic. When he stomped on that snake's head, and that loud noise occurred in the movie, that Satan was certainly bruised, if not crushed. The eventual crushing of the head of Satan will occur sometime in the future, and we hope it comes soon. If we look at Hebrews 2, 14 and 15, I don't think you have that, do you, Mary? I'm going to go ahead and look it up. What we see is a fulfillment. That was the fulfillment of that prophecy that we read here. The final crushing of Satan will occur in the future, but he did destroy the influence that Satan had with his sin and his guilt the day that he died. And let me read that. If you want to turn to Hebrews in your Bible, that's chapter 2, verse 13, pardon me, verse 14 and 15. Since the children have flesh and blood, he too shared in their humanity, that's our humanity, so that by his death he might destroy him who holds the power of death, that is, the devil, and free those who all their lives were held in slavery by the fear of death. So we no longer have to fear death. We are free from that. And those people in that era didn't fully understand what happened, and a lot of us don't. The prophet Moses made another prophecy in Genesis 12:3, where God is talking to Abraham and gives him the great Abrahamic covenant. Do you have that, Mary? That would be in Genesis 12:3.
I don't have that one.
You don't have that? Okay. We'll look that up quick. Okay, if you have your little brown pew Bibles, it's on page 8. The Lord said to Abram, leave your country, your people, and your father's household, and go to the land I will show you. That's verse 1. Verse 2, I will make you into a great nation, and I will bless you, and I will make your name great, and you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and whoever curses you, I will curse, and all the peoples of the earth will be blessed through you. And notice it doesn't say all the peoples of the earth will be blessed by you. That doesn't say the peoples of the earth will be blessed because of you, but something was supposed to go through Abraham and through his offspring to bless the peoples of the earth. And I did a little bit of research, and I found it quite interesting that only 1 in 500 people is Jewish, has Jewish origin in this world. But of the Nobel Prizes, 22% were won by Jews. 41% of the Nobel Prizes for economics, 28% of the Nobel Prizes for medicine, 25% for physics, 19% for chemistry, 13% for literature, and 9% of Nobel Prizes for peace have been awarded to Jews. And I would like to note that the committee who chooses who gets those prizes are made up of Norwegians and Swedes. So it's unlikely that there was any kind of monkey business going on there. We know that the Jews themselves have blessed the world with their minds. But far more important is this blessing of Jesus Christ. This was a blessing for the whole world that far exceeds all the inventions that ever were. Being freed from the curse of Adam and Eve, being freed from sin by Jesus Christ is an incredible blessing. Anyway, at age 75, Abraham left for the land that God showed him. He later had problems with his nephew Lot, and if those of you who know that story, Lot had a couple problems. Lot got in trouble with some people. Abraham went in with an army of guys and freed him from that situation where he was in captivity. And then Lot also had a little problem with where he wanted to live. He wanted to live close to sin, have it around him, he wanted to be near it, and that was Sodom. And we all know what had happened to Sodom. But Abraham also had problems. He went to Egypt. Because of his lies and his deception, he got into some trouble with the Pharaoh. Luckily, he got out. And later, he had problems because his wife wanted a son so badly. She wouldn't wait. She didn't have the patience. She didn't realize that a woman 90 years old could bear a son. And she had Abraham father a son through her slave girl. That that maidservant had a son named Ishmael. And Ishmael, for those of you who like history and genealogy, became the father of all the Arabs. Now, the Arabs right now, they inhabit most of North Africa and almost all the countries right around Israel, with the exception, everything south of Turkey and west of Iran is Arab country, down through the peninsula, the Arab Peninsula. And so, I'm thinking to myself, perhaps it would have been better had Abraham not fathered that child, Ishmael. As you know, God never broke his promise of making Abraham a great nation, even though Abraham was disobedient and was impatient and obeyed his wife. Not that we shouldn't obey our wives at times, but in this case, he shouldn't have. He didn't. He just couldn't believe it. And I think we do have Genesis 17:9, pardon me. Then God said to Abraham, "As for you, you must keep my covenant, you and your descendants after you, for the generations to come." And this indicates, again, that the covenant will go through Abraham, and the generations will be blessed. One thing that's important here is that God started to cut away all the junk here. We see that Jesus did not come from Hagar, the maidservant. He did not come from Ishmael. He came through a specific line. And this line of people was a relatively slim line, and it gets slimmer and slimmer as time goes on. So let's look back at the fourth prophecy, Numbers 24:17. You have that, Mary? Mm-hmm. Okay. I see him, and this is quite important. I want to talk a little bit about this prophet. The one who spoke this was not Moses. Even though it was written in the book of Numbers, it was not Moses who who got the prophecy from God. God was writing about a man named Balaam. Balaam was a Midianite. He was not a Hebrew. He was not part of the chosen people. But he was a godly man. He's like most of you. You know, you're not Hebrews, but you're godly. Okay? In those days, most of the people who knew God were Hebrews. But Balaam was used in this situation, and he was contacted by a man named Balaam, who was a Moabite. And the Jews had come out of Israel, and they were a large population. There were a couple million Jews who were kind of wandering the desert, trying to get into Israel. And they came in, and they camped next to Moab, and the king of the Moabites was Balaam. And he said, "Oh, excuse me, we can't have this. These guys are going to overrun us." And so he contacted Balaam, and he said, "Will you curse him? Will you curse the Jews, excuse me, and so that they won't enter our area, so they'll be destroyed," or what, something. And Balaam talked to God, and he says, "So God, what am I going to do about this?" He says, "Don't curse these people. These are from me." He says, "You bless these people. Go back to Balak and tell him what I told you." So he goes back, and Balak is not happy at all. But in the midst of all this exchange, Balaam went through a fairly long prophecy. And this is just part of it. And right there, in the very third word there, he says, "I see him." And he's talking about Jesus. "I see him, but not now. I behold him, but not near." So it wasn't in the area of the Moabites. It was south and east of Jerusalem, in that area. "A star will come out of Jacob." Okay? Jacob is another name for Israel. Israel's another name for Jacob. It was his new name. "Will come out of Jacob. A scepter will rise out of Israel. He will crush the foreheads of Moab and the skulls of all the people of Shem." Okay. Now, when he used that expression, he's talking about not necessarily those specific people, but a generation or a group of people who was disobedient and idolatrous. All right? Let's see that scepter again. What's a scepter? Anybody know? Okay, this is a scepter. And this is something that a king would hold. Okay? Your average sheep herder does not hold a scepter. He holds a staff. Okay? And it helps him get around. A king has a beautifully ornamented scepter. So when they talk about a scepter, it's a symbol of authority. It's a symbol of something that we expect to be kingly. Okay, so that's what that is. All right, Mary, go back to that other one if you would. The last prophecy of the day is Genesis 49:10. And again, we see it. We see the scepter. Let's all read this. "The scepter will not depart from Judah, nor the ruler's staff from between his feet, until he to whom it belongs shall come, and the obedience of the nations shall be his." Okay. Now the first picture of lion, Mary. Do we have that again? The Lion of Judah is Jesus. And when they talk about Judah, and this is all part of a scripture that came from a time when Jacob was talking to his sons. It was his last speech to them, and Jacob had been given interesting analysis, if you will, of what was going to happen with his sons. And in the end of Genesis, we see Jacob talking to his sons about them. And it's quite interesting. If you have your books again, I want you to turn to Genesis 49. It's almost at the end of Genesis. 50 is the last chapter. And there are 5 verses that God wrote about Judah. He also wrote 5 verses about Joseph. All the others were shorter than this. I'm going to read from the beginning. Judah, your brothers will praise you. Your hand will be on the neck of your enemies. Your father's sons will bow down to you. You are a lion's cub, O Judah. You return from prey, my son, like a lion. He crouches and lies down like a lioness. Who dares to rouse him? The scepter will not depart from Judah, nor the ruler's staff from between his feet, until he comes to whom it belongs. To whom it belongs is Jesus, and the obedience of the nations is his. He will tether his donkey to a vine. And where does that donkey come from? It's his colt to the choicest branch. Jesus rode a colt and a donkey. He will wash his garments in wine, his robes in the blood of grapes. It indicates the blood he will spill. His eyes will be darker than wine, his teeth whiter than milk. So it talks a little bit about Jesus' physical appearance. Okay, very briefly. So this talks about the nations. The nations will all be subject to Christ. And this hasn't happened in a political way or a physical way. It will. But spiritually, we all have all become his subjects. And this certain individual that he talked about, that he is the Messiah. Now, there's also in some versions of the Bible, it mentions the word Shiloh. And it says, it talks about the town, we think of a town being Shiloh, but actually, in this case, it refers to the Messiah. So what we see is a buildup of anticipation for the coming of a great leader among the Jews who would lead the world, who would crush the head of the evil serpent, who would bless the entire world, and be from a particular line of ancestries. Now, within the Jewish nation, within Jacob, within Israel, it's cut down to about 1/12 of what it was before. So now we know that Jesus is going to come, the Messiah is going to come from a particular tribe, from the tribe of Judah. Now, it's interesting that Jesus did not come from Rome. He did not come from Babylon. He came from one of the smallest and least powerful nations that the world knows. They didn't approach the size of Egypt or Babylon or Rome. And you could put 5 Israels in the state of Illinois, and half of Israel is desert. It's really not even to be used. The Jews comprise 0.2% of our population, of the world population. But these are the people that God used to cradle the Messiah. Let us pray. Father God, we thank you, and we hope you give us, for the hope you give us in your prophecy. Your prophecies rang true in the coming of Jesus as a servant. We look forward to the coming of Jesus a second time, that he will come in majesty and glory and power. Amen. The problem we have with prophecy is that we know something's going to come, but very seldom does prophecy say when it's coming. These folks didn't know when Jesus was going to come. They could have looked in the book of Daniel, and they could have done the math and figured out when he was going to come. But certainly at this time, the book of Daniel wasn't even written. And those who were around when Daniel did write his prophecies weren't paying close attention. But in our lives, something else has been prophesied. Each one of us will die. Each one of us will face, unless we're perfect, we're in trouble. And unless we have been covered by His blood, we are not qualified for heaven. And the prophecy is that all will die once. All of us will die once. What we expect is not to have a second death. If any of you here today feel that you need to step forward and confess Jesus as Lord and Savior, we certainly invite you to do so now as we sing this hymn of invitation.